Welcome to DNF. This is a Formula One podcast. I am a Spencer Hall. That is a Jessica Smetana. We're here to talk about the race that was in the form of the Canadian Grand Prix. And we're also here to keep the French theme going because I'll be going to a little race in France. It's not Formula One, but it goes vroom, and it's adjacent enough to a lot of the people we know. So we're going to leap right into it. Jessica, you are coming back from a weekend of frivolity and travel, which means that you, like me, you're beat. You're tired.
Yes, I am beat. I was in New York this weekend for a wedding because Spencer, it's wedding season. But more importantly than that, it's the season of 24 hours of Le Mans, which is why you're going to France. And my dream is for DNF to just turn into a travel podcast. So I really want to just start with that. You're about to embark on your journey. I believe the race starts Wednesday in France. Is that right?
Effectively, yeah. The Le
Okay.
Mans week starts Wednesday.
Got it. Okay.
Tuesday will be for, oh, here is where you wash your clothes, and here is where stuff is. And then Wednesday, this town, which is about yay big, will become yay big. It will become like 4 times, 5 times its normal size for the Le Mans 24-hour race festivities. I'm staying at a cute, tiny little French hotel. I will be having cute, tiny little French foods. I will be watching that. I'll be listening to the hellish sounds of Cadillac's project car, which, if you've never heard, is the most intimidating noise in all of automotive sports. It's I don't really know what to expect other than a lot of caffeine, because 24 hours at any age is so much longer than you think it's going to be if you can't sleep in the middle of it.
So, do you plan on staying awake for the entirety of the event?
I'm a good cat napper. So
Okay.
I think I've talked to a friend of the program, Bozy Taterovich, about this. He says that even the pit crew, they get little 20, 30-minute naps. There is like an official nap room. There's going to be like an official nap that people can take, those covering it and those working it who aren't necessary personnel, like essential personnel. So I may do that. We'll play it by ear because I've never been to one of these, and I will probably never go to this one again.
It begs the question, why are you going this year?
I had the opportunity to, which is nice. Also going because it's part of the Triple Crown of Motorsport. The Triple Crown of Motorsport being the Indianapolis 500, Monaco, and Le Mans. Also, like, which one did Steve McQueen make a movie about? He made a movie about Le Mans. You know how many? You know how many lines he has in the whole movie? 18. He's got
Nice.
18 lines.
Is the Triple Crown of Motorsport still a thing for drivers?
Probably sentimentally, yeah.
Okay.
You know, I think sentimentally, it's probably a thing for a lot of drivers. There's a fascinating crew of people who end up doing this kind of racing. There's disabused, former aristocrats, like former like people with count before before their formal title. Nobility people who end up doing this. There's also a lot of people who are either F1 adjacent or directly involved with F1. That goes for both teams. You know, Ferrari, of course, won last year. Former F1 driver was their number 1 driver on their team. Because remember, nobody's driving all 24 hours. That would be stupid. You would die. Remember this is a European thing. They're like, we've been through a period where we let everyone die doing the sport, and that wasn't cool. So we've decided, since y'all yelled at us a lot, we're not going to do that anymore. So you get a team of drivers.
We may go back at some point. You never know the way things are going. But that is super exciting. I'm excited to do our recap podcast when you get back. So I want to get into the travel nitty-gritty because as a Midwesterner, I'm obsessed with flights and weather. So I assume you're flying into Paris and you're going to rent a car and drive down there and take the train. Like, how are we doing this?
Oh, even better. Even better. The TGV goes straight there.
Nice.
So you can get out of Charles de Gaulle straight to the TGV and then go, and you will be in the middle of Le Mans.
This is great. I'm very excited for you. I know you aren't a fan of cheese in general,
No.
the food, the category of food,
Hmm.
which is a bummer because as you mentioned, you'll be in a tiny little room with your tiny European toilets and your
Yes.
tiny waters with no ice, and probably no air conditioning, but you will not get to eat a tiny slice of brie on a tiny baguette, which is very unfortunate.
That's a bonus about the trip for me, which is good. You can keep it because cheese is just bad milk. I do have
Mm.
air conditioning. I did look that up.
Oh,
Our
yeah,
hotel
well, look
does
at you.
have air conditioning. I'm sure something that the French regard with a mild sense of disgust, all the while turning it, down. The temperatures aren't going to be too bad. There's like, I think it's going to be like 65 to 75. That's a French summer.
Yeah, that's pretty good actually. I do want to talk about the weather in Montreal this past weekend because
Hmm.
it ended up being the perfect weather for a Formula 1 race. Not only was it wet and rainy, but it was intermittently wet and rainy during the
Hmm.
race itself. And so we actually ended up with a pretty fun race, Spencer, which we were hoping either rain or safety car, and we ended up with both. So what did you think of the race this weekend?
That it was a race of this era, which by that I mean a good race of this era, which by that I mean Max Verstappen won, and that's how we usually have to go say. We have to go, well, Max Verstappen and Red Bull won, and a bunch of interesting things happened that we don't even really have to sell you on. A lot of the time, if you're listening to somebody talk about the races, you'll have to make excuses. You'll have to sort of play up a lie to say like, oh, this was almost exciting, right? Like Lando Norris almost got into it. But for real, Lando Norris had a great race here. Ferrari had a disastrous day. If you want to just start with, if it bleeds, it leads. If you want to start with who did the bleeding, if you want to start with what was bad and what you can say, oh my God, what were you doing? Everything Ferrari did. It was like they had to Ferrari out and they just decided to get it out of their system because things had been going so well.
Yeah.
Uh, you'll know how badly they did because Christian Horner said that he said we can't have many more efforts like we had on Sunday, which we can talk about Red Bull later, but they made some serious mistakes, particularly
Hmm.
Sergio Perez. But he said we can't afford too many of those, even though Ferrari let us off the hook today
Yeah.
by having a worse
Well,
day than we did.
does Ferrari wait until people start hyping them up to catastrophically fuck things up? Like I feel like they're not going to just do it out of the gate. They're going to wait until you're almost expecting them to do well and then they're going to rip your heart out. It feels like after the last race we were saying how close this constructors championship was getting, how
Hmm.
close the drivers championship was getting, and then they just dropped this turd. Both cars finished without any points, both cars DNF. Just absolutely catastrophic. The other thing is like I'm wondering if a there needs to be some sort of designation in Formula One for the cars that try to go to slick tires first and fail because they're like the sacrificial lambs of the wet races. Like you deserve a point for that. You deserve a point if you're Pierre Gasly or Charles Leclerc and you go out there and you try and you absolutely fail because it was terribly timed. But at least you give all the other drivers the information about not doing what you just did because it's so brave and yet someone has to do it and you never want to be the first car to do it. You're never going to be
Nope.
It's never going to be the right time if you're the
Mm-mm.
first car, but someone has to be the first car. You can't all do it at the same time. So that was brutal for Charles.
It was brutal. It was at one point there's this graphic that you can see if you go on Twitter, the social media service of your choice and look for Leclerc, you'll see this graphic that shows what everybody was on tires wise. And I think everyone's like wet, 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 wet. It's like 19 wets, and then the 20th is hards.
Yeah.
And that was Leclerc at one point. And you go, that's probably not good,
That's
especially
probably
when
not
his
the
name
right tire.
is all the way at the bottom
He was so
and
slow.
everyone else is above him. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
it was unfortunate. But I mean, other than if you were a Ferrari driver, the safety car and the rain did kind of shuffle the deck slightly in a way
slightly.
that it kind of there was kind of like a ball don't lie moment in this game
Hmm.
where or in this race, I mean, where like the safety car luck turned. It had gone one way in Miami, and then the racing god said, "This is going to be payback for Lando being on the positive receiving end of good safety car luck. Now we're going to give it back to Verstappen.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was kind of the race at that point. Although there were a few moments where, like when Lando came back out after his pit stop, you thought maybe if his tires could have gotten a little warmer quicker, he would have had a real shot at getting that spot back. Maybe if George but were able to challenge towards the end, he could have ended up back, in second or first, but it didn't happen for whatever reasons. Maybe you blame George a little bit for making some mistakes, but
I mean,
I do think everyone kind of made mistakes in this race because it was tough conditions.
this was the most George Russell race. It was the most George Russell race because lots of talking. He was very chatty. He was brilliant at times and got himself in a position to, podium. Good for him on that. He also made along the way some obvious mistakes. I don't mean some little tiny detail that somebody on our F1 technical would notice and go, oh, that cost him 0.3 of a second. No, I mean, he hit a curb and almost drove off the road. Like things like that, where he just missed stuff, big stuff. And I find that, I know that's frustrating for fans of Mert who really want him to be more consistent. And yes, granted, he will have to be more consistent if he wants to end up where he wants to end up as, the alpha on a major racing team. However, it's very endearing for those of us watching, because what's not fun about watching a dude make 8 of the most brilliant turns you've ever seen and nearly losing it on the 9th before managing to win something anyway?
Yeah, and you know what? I think if the conditions had been perfect in this race and he had made some of the errors that he made, ultimately that may have cost him the race. I think rightfully we would be pretty hard on him. But I think given how difficult it was to race, to overtake with, go off the racing line and be on the wet track, and some of the, timing that maybe didn't work out perfectly for Mercedes, I'd kind of give him the benefit of the doubt on this one. Although I am curious, Spencer, what you think about what's going on with Lewis Hamilton right now, because the Lewis Hamilton fans are beginning to get a little conspiratorial about the fact that he has not been racing very well in qualifying. He has not been able to outqualify George this season. He's a lot slower on his pace on Saturdays, and maybe he's not, maybe there's some sabotage going on in his side of the Mercedes garage. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
I encourage everyone to believe the conspiracy theory of their choice. If it makes you feel good, if it makes,
but not all of them.
The point of believing a conspiracy theory is comfort. You're anxious in an uncertain world, and what you want to believe is something that's absolutely true and that there has a plan and a plot behind. Also, this is Formula One. Go ahead and believe in your conspiracies, because stranger things have turned out to be true in this sport. So if that's what you want to believe, then yes, go right ahead. My argument has always been that George Russell is better at driving a slightly worse car than Lewis Hamilton, because Lewis Hamilton knows the absolute last finite edge of performance. And if you don't give him a car that he can take to that, he kind of short circuits and doesn't know what to do. At the margins, he's still one of the 4 or 5 best drivers in the world. It just so happens that his car is not matching the skill that he can put into it. So, also, why not? Honestly, why not? If you're Mercedes and this guy's leaving, why are you not pouring all of your attention, energy, and development into the driver that you're going to be working with the next year? That's cold, but that's, and especially given what Lewis Hamilton's meant to that team. But fundamentally, they're already in different places.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't even think you have to be conspiratorial about it. I think that this is what happens when there's a sitting duck Formula One driver position. I don't know if that's the right term for it, but
but I get you.
Lame duck, sitting duck, I don't know. Some
lame
sort
duck,
of
I think is what we're doing,
duck.
Yes.
Of a certain variety. You're not going to be in the meetings where they're planning out things for next year. They're not going to want you to steal their IP, so you kind of get frozen out of those sorts of things. You might not get the new upgrade. You might not get the best strategy. They're obviously going to have to put all their duck eggs in the George Russell basket going forward because you chose to leave. So this is kind of like a natural progression. Now, do I think that it's like nice? Like, no, of course not. I'm a Lewis
No.
Hamilton fan, but I understand if that is indeed what's happening, why it's happening. And I think Lewis, he probably knew that that would be the reality when he signed with Ferrari. I think it's probably a good case for not like who I don't know if he leaked that he was leaving or if it would have come out anyways or if too many people knew about it, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure eventually it would have leaked out, but I think that's a good reason to try to keep those things under wraps. I don't know if that was his choice or not, but because this is kind of the way that you're treated. Like he for so long at Mercedes was the top guy because he's Lewis Hamilton, because he won the championships and he won all the races and all the podiums. Now he's leaving and Mercedes needs to fill that role. So they're going to spend more time with George. And honestly, George, he needs it. He hasn't been in this position before with this team. So he's getting this sort of experience that will set him up in the future. And so I kind of see all sides of it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a conspiracy, but it also doesn't mean that Lewis is not performing as well because he's worse. I think that there's obviously more things in play than just like he's slow now.
Also, you can believe that because they're not going to come out and say that. No one's going to come out and say that.
Yeah, but I mean, he was very sad and disappointed after the race. I did enjoy, however, actually two things. I want to go back for a second to 2:00 Eastern on Sunday in New York when I turned on ABC and the race was not on TV there because the Puerto Rican Day Parade was going on and it got preempted. So shout out to ESPN Plus because I was able to watch it on there. But a warning would have been nice from ABC, but I understand, that they have bigger and better things going on than Formula One on Sunday afternoon. But that was a very confusing 10 minutes for me and quite a scramble.
Thanks, guys. Yeah.
Couldn't have given me a warning. But seriously, it was fine. But there was a very funny moment after the race where George Russell got in a bit of a driving incident with Oscar Piastri, and the drivers watched it in the cool down room. And I want to watch this video with you, Spencer, right now.
Yeah.
Robin's racing, I guess.
Okay, so that was Lando, Max, and George watching the little incident, and Lando says Robin's racing, which is something that I know it's like a expression that a lot of people say, but George Russell has said this before. So he is like quoting George Russell back to George Russell. And the other thing in this video that I love is Verstappen's face. He looks at George Russell like, what was that, dude? What were you thinking?
Listen, Max is so much more expressive than people give him credit for because he's like...
It's a great video.
Yeah.
That was Spencer doing a shocked face.
Yeah, shocked face. It's a great... This is an audio medium for some people, so shocked face. That's what I just did.
So in the media pen after the race, Max said that he kind of had to... console George Russell because he was kind of beating himself up over the way that the race went. He started on pole position and didn't win the race, which has happened to people who race against Max Verstappen countless times. So he really shouldn't beat himself up too much. But one other thing that I liked that I could gather from the drivers after the race was that they really liked this race. They felt that it was super challenging and exciting. And like, this was the kind of race that really like you have to exercise all your different racing muscles. Like there's a lot of strategy. There's a lot of just timing, pacing, racing, overtaking. Like it had like a little bit of everything in it. It was like very technically difficult. But it had enough dry spells where they were going, flat out for a lot of the time. So it was really, really cool to see that and see how much they enjoy these types of races versus after Monaco, where they were all saying how bored and sleepy they were. So yeah, overall, I think if I had to give this race a grade, it would be probably like a B+, and I don't give those out lightly.
Nah, I mean, a solid B to B+. I would give it somewhere in there. It was interesting. It made drivers think. It challenged teams' ability to manage everything, including things they could not predict or control, like the weather, which I do like me a nice weather race. I like a little bit of rain here and there. I like the looming threat where they're like mid race, like Crofty's looking up and going, well, that's a menacing cloud. Like, it's excellent. Give me a little bit of drama. Give me a little bit of tension. If you can't give me a free for all like I want every single week, which is not realistic in 2024, then give me this. I will take it every time.
I think that the cost cap should be expanded so that every team can hire their own meteorologist, because I think so often you'll see a team not get the weather report right,
Mhm.
and maybe that's a good thing because then we do get more screw ups. But I think it would be nice to have like Al Roker in the garage for Mercedes or for Ferrari or Red Bull. But that's just my own personal thing. More meteorology incorporated into Formula One.
More meteorology and less relying on some ancient boomer app, which I'm sure is what Ferrari did.
You think they're on the Apple weather app, like the least,
the one that doesn't
least predictable weather app.
Like it's 6 hours old by the time they get it, you know?
No, it's not loading, and they're like, I don't see anything on the radar here. Just
no,
still hasn't loaded yet.
I know it looks like rain, but this says sunshine. Yeah.
If I were Red Bull or one of these teams that does have a ton of money, I would go back in time and buy Dark Sky before Apple does or did, whenever that was. I would go back in time because that was the best weather app ever. It was so accurate. It predicted cloud cover perfectly, precipitation, wind speed, direction, everything. I would go back in time and buy all of their proprietary information and just hoard it and keep it for myself and have the best weather radar on the grid. But no one did that. No one listened to me.
No one listened to you. This is we're discovering Jessica Smetana, weather fiend.
I miss that app so much. It's just not the same without it.
No.
I never know.
You know, as a Midwesterner fascinated with weather, who doesn't love living in a place where it's 90 every day and it rains at 4 o'clock?
The weather is very predictable in Miami, and it would be more predictable if I had Dark Sky, but I don't. Even it could even predict weather in Miami. I'm telling you, this thing knew it was very good. Okay, but in other news, I think we should move on to maybe some of the interesting off the track discussions this weekend, because there was drama.
We're getting so much closer to silly season. I can't wait. It's going to be a good one. We can take one name off the board, which is Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez got a brand new contract just prior to the race, and he celebrated by having a terrible race. Hero, exactly what I would do. You extend me and you go, hey, to prove my worth, I'm going to have the worst race of the year for us.
Yeah, he didn't do so hot and really hasn't been doing so hot for a while. Like, he has been pretty consistently bad in qualifying and not been his normal good, like, 2021 version of himself, 2022. Like, he's just been pretty bad. And so the contract reportedly was for 2 years, but then Red Bull let it slip that it was a 1-1. So after the first year, which will be next year, there's a mutual option that is Red Bull can decide if they're going to keep him or not. They also decided, like, Yuki Tsunoda, he's not going anywhere. So that I thought was interesting. I think, like, where I end up with Carlos Sainz and all of this is that he's probably in this awkward position of being too good to be the number 2 driver on a top team, but probably not good enough to be a number 1 driver on a top team. And also those spots are all already taken on McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull. So he's kind of like in no man's land and probably was never really a real candidate for the Red Bull or Mercedes gigs. And so I think it seems like he will end up at Williams right now.
Yeah, I could see that. Also, there's a fascinating thing that to me at least, that Perez, let's see if I can say this right. Perez to me is the thing that you don't want to let go and is the known quantity, but you also know exactly what you have. It's not changing. That quantity is going to be pretty much what it is, and that is a number 2 driver, which seems kind of interesting to me given Red Bull's penchant or chewing up and spitting out drivers as fast as they can. You know, so It's assigned to me in a team with an often turbulent roster and a lot of turnover, with very finicky people making the decisions in terms of driver selection, that they went even this hard with a 1-1 on Perez. That's so fascinating to me, especially given what people are looking at for 2026, right? For like the new rules changes and whether that's going to, and I think this is a fair consideration, whether that's going to at the margins favor one driver over another. There might be somebody who just matches with this particular set of specs better than another one. It's really interesting to me, especially given Christian Horner's comment, which is they are all Red Bull drivers, which is just a reminder that,
ominous.
yeah, that it may look like you're not replaceable, but remember, you're all Red Bull drivers, which is different than just being a driver.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Red Bull drivers, Daniel Ricciardo does not have a home yet next year, I believe. So TBD what happens to that fourth Red Bull seat. However, Jacques Villeneuve had some very controversial, direct things to say on Sky about Daniel Ricciardo. So let's listen to this clip.
Why is he still in F1? Why? What? We're hearing the same thing now for the last 4 or 5 years. We have to make the car better for him, poor him. Sorry, it's been 5 years of that. No, you're in F1. Maybe you make that effort for Lewis Hamilton, who's won multiple championships. You don't make that effort for a driver that can't cut it. If you can't cut it, go home. There's someone else to take your place. That's how it's always been in racing. It's the pinnacle of the sport. There's no reason to keep going and to keep finding excuses. And you all talk about that first season or first 2 seasons. He was beating a Vettel that was burnt out, that was trying to invent things with the car to go win and just making a mess of his weekends. And then he was beating for half a season Verstappen when Verstappen was 18 years old, just starting. Then that was it. He stopped beating anyone after that.
I mean, that's quite a harsh look at his career. From your point of view then, do you think he's been overrated the whole time?
I think it's his image has kept it in F1 more than his actual results.
Oof. I mean, so I saw a lot of, especially British F1 fans saying that this was really harsh, to which I wanted to be like, listen to an episode of First Take or Get Up or any ESPN morning show where they rip apart Dak Prescott for like 4 hours on a random Monday in July. And this seems pretty tame, but I guess coming from Sky Sports, maybe this was a little harsher than the normal kind of criticism that drivers get. So what do you think?
Harsh does not mean inaccurate.
Yeah, I think that goes without saying.
Let me ask you to hold these two thoughts in your head at the same time. Jacques Villeneuve is being a dick, and he's not wrong. He's 100% not wrong. This is very much a case of you didn't have to say it that way, but he did, and it's all, I think, mostly accurate that Daniel Ricciardo has been frustrating to Daniel Ricciardo and anyone who wants to pull for him, because at times he shows flashes, at times he pulls off great things in a car, and then inconsistency rears its head and he goes back into this kind of dormant state where he manages to stay in the sport through both sheer charm, getting along with everybody for real in his teams, being a good worker, and occasionally, again, flaring up every now and then, qualifying, in the top 10, having a good run, and then falling back to his spot somewhere in the high teens or the low teens, right? Somewhere like around 12 or 13. This has been the pattern. He's had every chance. That's undeniable. I want to go ahead and also comment on Jacques Villeneuve and say, you look like you've been living in Portland, buddy. You look like a middle-aged music critic. Right?
Okay, that's a good rebuttal. But wait, can we listen to Daniel Ricciardo?
Yeah.
Daniel Ricciardo's rebuttal too.
You've had your critics this weekend. Is that a good way to answer them?
I've just been told. I don't listen or read, but yeah, there's definitely some people out there who, whatever. I won't give them the time of day, but top 5. I've been quick all weekend. We're less than 2/10 from pole, so.
So the bleeped out part was him saying "eat shit," which is so good.
Which is fair. Which again, viewer, that is harsh. and it is also accurate given Daniel Ricciardo's position and his performance in this race. That's what you're supposed to think as a competitor.
Yeah.
That if somebody points all this out, the thing you have to believe is I am one race away.
Yeah, and he had a
That's
great
what you
weekend.
have to believe.
He did have a great weekend. So what Sky needs to do, what Red Bull needs to do, is have someone go on Sky every week and say how worthless he is, because apparently that was a great motivator. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Daniel Ricciardo, like, legitimately was a really great driver at one point in his career, and I think that you can coast off of that for a while in F1, especially if you're a good teammate and someone that people get along with. So I don't think that that's like that part was framed as an insult, which I do think is a compliment, because Formula One, these 20 seats are not given to the best 20 F1 drivers in the world. That is just not the case. If it were, there would be a number of drivers that would not be on this grid. So that being said, you do what you can to keep one of the seats in the sport. It's very difficult to do that given the politics, given the money, given the skill level, everything that's involved in that. And I think he's done a pretty good job of remaining part of the sport, even when it seemed like he would not be in a seat anymore in the not too distant past. So anyways.
Yeah, I mean, Jacques Villeneuve, go write a column about your favorite Built to Spill album. Okay.
He does, like, it's
go
like
tell me about the underrated genius of Guster.
Yeah. I feel like we're having a real Trey Wingo steak moment.
Listen, that man is absolutely right, and I will fry him for that fit all day. Rolled out of bed looking like somebody's like extremely off-putting stepfather. What on earth?
Yeah. Well, should we end with that? I mean, what a week. It was a great race. It was a spicy weekend on the grid. Silly season is starting to ramp up. Spencer's going to France. Spencer, have a great time. Please take lots of pics, take lots of notes. We'll do a full recap when you get back.
Absolutely. And hey, a former F1 driver won last year. So this is a place of redemption. It's a place where a lot of amazing things can happen for people who might have struggled elsewhere. So I kind of hope that we end up seeing that again. And in terms of F1, I believe our next race is Catalunya.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yes.
That is correct. Oh, and before we go, Alex Albon had the best overtake of the season, and I feel like an idiot for not mentioning that sooner, but given the fact that he didn't finish the race, it will probably be forgotten forever. But highlight of my weekend. It was pretty cool. Check it out if you didn't see it.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And you know what? You know what I have to say to you? Thank you. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Amazing. Same thing Esteban Ocon said to his crew over the radio when he was asked to cooperate with team orders, and he just said, "No, that's nice. That's too nice." Somebody, please have a wonderful week, because Alpine won't.
They never do.